We're back here on the GSMC Football Podcast, and
keep yourself in the loop of everything football on the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast. The latest news on and off the field, be it college football, Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, Pac-12, ACC to the NFL. We've got you covered. Listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast.
And welcome everybody to another edition of the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. As always, I'm your host, Kenneth Grunfelder, and it's great to have you guys here on this Thursday, August 22nd. We have a lot to cover on the show today. Before I get into all of that, just want to remind you guys, as always, to tip or donate, get your comments recognized. Make sure to hit the little $ icon in the chat menu. This will give you a opportunity to put out a super chat, which I will acknowledge during the live broadcast, and it just makes the show more interactive between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. We appreciate your guys' viewership each and every day, and another way to contribute to the show is also going to the link, which is gsmcpodcast.net. Super chat is a little bit easier to do because you're not clicking off of the video, and like I said, we appreciate your guys' viewership each and every day, and any contribution means a lot to us. So let's get into what we are going to discuss for today. So we're going to start off the show. We're going to talk about the preseason matchups tonight. We got the Colts and the Bengals, and the Bears and the Chiefs. And I know from what I was reading last night, we're going to see, I think, some of the starters for the Colts. I know the Bears, they're going to be resting their starters. I'm assuming the Bengals will be resting their starters, and we'll see with the Chiefs. But I know, at least from what I saw, it looks like we're going to see a little bit of Anthony Richardson tonight, but I could be wrong. So we'll get into that. We'll just talk about the teams in general and their expectations going into the season, as I've talked about them a lot on the show. Then we'll talk about Bo Nix being named the starter officially by the Denver Broncos. So I know I talked about that a little bit this week, but that was made official, so we'll get into that. We'll also get into talking about some more stuff with the Sunday ticket, the price of it when you go to the Apple store, so I wanted to get into that. Then in the fourth part of the show, moving along, after that, we'll talk about Sauce Gardner's comments on Daniel Jones from yesterday's practice, and, just get into what he said, and I'll give you my opinion on it. And then in the final part of the show, I will do my final receiver rankings, and we will do the teams in the AFC West. So let's get into the first topic, which is discussing the preseason matchups for tonight. So we got the Colts and the Bengals, two teams that played each. Well, actually, both these matchups were matchups last year. The Colts played the Bengals in Cincy, and the Bears, against the Chiefs. The Chiefs won that game. What was it? I think it was like 41-7. It was a very lopsided game. Obviously, it's the preseason, but just wanted to bring that up because these were two matchups last year. And for these teams, I could definitely see all these teams making the playoffs. More specifically, I think, in my opinion, the Chiefs and the Bengals are my locks to make the playoffs. The Chiefs, pretty much everybody's going to have them making the playoffs this year because of what they have accomplished and who they have at quarterback and head coach, tight end, the defense. We don't really need to get into that. The Bengals, I'm expecting them to have a bounce-back season with a healthy Joe Burrow. And I know I was watching a little bit of ESPN last night, and there was something, I don't know what it was, but it was just, I know Joe Burrow was in it, and he was, it was covering the LSU team that he was a part of. But also, they were just talking. Actually, that was something different. But NFL Live was also on, I believe. And, they were showing all of Burrow's past injuries and just... I wasn't really focusing in on it, but I know they were talking about the Bengals and, Joe Burrow getting hurt last year, which, derailed the Bengals season. They were playing really well. How many times have I talked about that? They played really well when he was healthy. And then, unfortunately, he got hurt again. He shook off the calf injury, and then, had the injury with his wrist, and he ends up getting hurt against the Ravens. And that basically derailed their season. Jake Browning did do a nice job, but it just wasn't enough. And now going into this season, if Joe Burrow is healthy, the Bengals I look at as a Super Bowl contender because they have done it before when Burrow is healthy. The years that Burrow was healthy for a full season, they make it to the AFC Championship game. Now, I know there's some concerns with their defense. They did lose some pieces this offseason, particularly on the defensive side of the ball. But I think with the healthy Burrow, this team is going to be in the thick of it. So we'll see what happens. And then on the other side, so, I talk about the Bengals and the Chiefs, two very experienced teams when it comes to the postseason. But then on the other side, you got a couple of teams that they're looking to take the next step with their young quarterbacks. And last year, we got to see a little bit of Anthony Richardson. And unfortunately, we didn't get to see enough of him because he ended up getting hurt and was out pretty much the whole year. But with him leading the charge on the offense, with Jonathan Taylor healthy, you got a trio of young receivers and a defense that, people look at as underrated. This team is a team to watch out for. And there are people in the media that think this team is going to be good. And, I'm kind of on that train as well. Last year they went 9-8. They came very close to making the playoffs. And I think we saw, I mean, at least from watching Anthony Richardson a little bit when they played the Broncos a couple weeks ago, he's going to have to shake off that rust because he hasn't played in a while. And, the Colts, they might see him struggle early on in the year, but they're a team that could get it hot towards the end of the year, and maybe they make it in as a wild card team. I definitely could see that. I just want to see Anthony Richardson play for a full season because, it's unfortunate that his season ended so soon. So you got the Colts and their young quarterback, and then, of course, you have the Bears. And, they've been the topic of conversation also because, they're in the training camp version of Hard Knocks. I still got to watch the latest episode, which I'll talk about at some point, probably tomorrow when I get to it. But there's a lot of hype around the Bears, a lot of hype, and I've talked about them many times this offseason as well, and the moves that they've made. And from this past preseason game, you see why Bears fans are really excited. Now, there's going to be growing pains because the Bears didn't score on, their first few drives, but then they got it going. And especially on that last drive that Caleb Williams played, where he hits Rome Odunze on that 45-yard pass, and he has that rushing touchdown where he's scrambling around and he follows his lineman into the end zone, who's blocking for him downfield, even though they're already down the field. But you guys know what I mean. The 9-yard touchdown run. That's the good that the Bears can get out of this guy. And, I know from talking to some of my peers, it's interesting because on one side, you have people that are very excited about Caleb Williams and think he's going to be great. And then there's some of my other peers who think he's not going to be very good. I think he is going to be good. Now, he's got to show it in real games, in games that matter. But I just think the situation that he's in, the talent that he possesses, I don't know. For me, I think the Bears might have their guy. Even though it might be an overreaction, we still got to see. Now, if it turns out that he's not the guy, then we will acknowledge that. But I think from what I've seen, the Bears might have found it. But only time will tell. Only time will tell. And just like the Colts with Anthony Richardson, Caleb Williams is going to experience growing pains. He's not going to be great right off the bat. He's going to go through some struggles, but they could be another team that gets hot towards the end of the year. But it's also just like the Bears as a team. Because their defense played well towards the end of the year. The weapons that they have on offense. I just feel like this team has a lot of talent. I just feel like they should be in the mix for a playoff spot. And maybe they get in at 9-8. I still look at them as the third best team in the division. But that doesn't mean, especially in the NFC, that they can't make the playoffs. I feel like they definitely can. It's not far-fetched to see a rookie quarterback playing in the playoffs. Go back to 2012. We saw Andrew Luck play in the playoffs, Russell Wilson and RG3. They all played in the playoffs. Now, unfortunately for RG3, he got hurt in his only playoff game. But, Caleb Williams in his rookie year, who's to say he can't make the playoffs? So, obviously these matchups aren't going to matter. One of them you will find on Amazon Prime, which is the Bengals Colts game, and then on NFL Network you'll find the Bears and the Chiefs. And just to look at the lines for tonight, so the Bengals are 6.5-point favorites. They're 0-2 this preseason. The Colts are 1-1. Bears are 3-0 this preseason. And the Chiefs are 0-2. And the Chiefs are 1-point underdogs. So, and both games are there's sunshine, at least looking on the CBS app, so that's good. There should be no delays like the Hall of Fame game. Well, that ended up getting postponed, but yeah, so Colts Bengals, that'll be 8 p.m. Eastern time, like I said, on Amazon Prime. So hopefully whoever's watching this, you do have Amazon Prime, because there are some alternate ways that you could take in content you're not going to be able to use. And I'm not going to get into what specifically, but if you know what I'm talking about, a tweet that was put out recently, you'll know what I'm talking about when it comes to taking in games in alternate ways. And then Chiefs Bears, that'll be 8:20 p.m. Eastern time. So, like I said, I think the Colts are going to play some of their starters, so keep an eye on that. And yeah, I mean, this is for a lot of these guys on these four teams, and especially the rest of the games this weekend, it's an opportunity, your last opportunity really, to show the coaches, hey, I belong on this team. So let me know what you guys think though about these four teams. What is one prediction that you have for one of them going into the year? Let me know in the comments. So we are going to take our first break of the show, and then when we come back, we will talk about another young quarterback. We'll talk about Bo Nix officially being named the starter for the Broncos. So with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits. I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift. Oh,
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the second part of the show, we are now going to talk about Bo Nix officially being named the starting quarterback for the Broncos. And kind of a similar way it turned out for the Raiders when Antonio Pierce was not guaranteeing anything. It didn't seem like he was going to come to a final decision. And then all of a sudden, I mean, eventually it was going to happen, but he ended up naming the starter like the day after he was saying that he wasn't sure. And that's kind of like what happened with the Broncos here and Sean Payton. So he was named the starter, and I mean, I'm not really surprised. It definitely seemed like it was trending towards that, the way it was being made out. And just like, some of the reports that you're hearing that, Zach Wilson was kind of falling down the depth chart. And I mean, it really was going to come down to either Jarrett Stidham or Bo Nix. I would have been surprised if Zach Wilson was going to be the starter. I was leaning more towards it was going to be Jarrett Stidham to start the year, going into the preseason, of course. And then as we've gone through it and, what you're hearing in the media and things like that, it ultimately came down to Jarrett Stidham and Bo Nix, and Bo Nix ended up playing really well in the preseason so far, and now he's the starting quarterback. And I don't have a problem with this. I mean, if he looks like he's ready to go, if he looks like he's game ready, then you make that decision and you put him in. And the Broncos' first game is in Seattle, and it's interesting because those two teams are Russell Wilson's former teams, and he will not be a part of that game. So it's going to be Bo Nix against Geno Smith most likely. And I think I do have some quotes from Sean Payton on the decision from an article on NFL.com. So he said, Bo Nix is going to be our starting quarterback. I felt like, and I said this to you guys 2 weeks ago, that room has been outstanding. Stidham, certainly with his experience and then being able to work with Zach Wilson, all three of those guys, we've got some tough decisions as we get into the roster. Obviously, and Bo Nix said, obviously that's great to share with such a great player like John Elway, because he becomes the first rookie quarterback to start week 1 for the Broncos since John Elway, which that is some very good company to be in. He said, doesn't matter when your first start is, doesn't matter if you have to wait or you go right now. You just want to go out there and get the win and ultimately compete at a high level. So that's what my goal is at the beginning, is just to give our team the best chance to win games. And I think and Patrick Surtain also said he knows how to win ball games. So yeah, that's some good praise there from one of his teammates. Also, Sean Payton added, Bo will start, and we've kind of gone through our process in the very beginning of it all. Just speaking with George Patton and Greg Penner and understanding that oftentimes these things take care of themselves. We're not in a hurry to arrive at those types of decisions. We want to see it, and I think it's important relative to the team that we had handled it that way. He's been outstanding. Obviously, there's a ton of room for growth. There's a lot of things that he needs to work on. I've already spoke with all three of those guys. Stiddy will be a great resource for him as well as Zach. We feel like that offseason, it's just such an important position. We made some really good decisions, and we're going to have a chance to see them unfold as the season goes on. Now, look, I mean, it's not the greatest quarterback room, but, Jarrett Stidham is a veteran. And I mean, I guess Zach Wilson is a veteran. He's been in the league since 21. But, yeah, I mean, listen, Sean Payton has been very optimistic with his quarterbacks. And he's been backing them up. And I did hear a clip that, of him talking about Zach Wilson, saying that, I don't care, if you're going to make millions with us or with another team, we want to put you, whether, you're with us or not, we want to make sure that you're in a better spot, so, they're going to try to help him along. Which, I mean, I guess is good to hear. I mean, regardless of how you feel about Zach Wilson and how things turned out with the Jets, just hearing Sean Payton say that about Zach Wilson, I mean, it's good to have a coach that, has your back in that respect. But, yeah, I mean, it was never really going to come down to Zach Wilson being the starter. That just was not in the cards. I don't think Zach Wilson embarrassed himself so far in the preseason. Well, he did get tackled for a safety. But, I mean, from some of the highlights that I watched, I mean, some throws were good. Some throws, I mean, he should have had the game against the Colts. There was one that, should have been intercepted, but the guy dropped it. But, yeah, Zach Wilson, unfortunately for him, his days as being a starting quarterback are over. And who knows, what happens here with the Broncos. So we just know that Bo Nix and Jarrett Stidham, they're the top two quarterbacks. Zach Wilson's the number 3. And, maybe if a team comes calling that's really desperate for a quarterback, excuse me, had a sneeze. Like I always say, it always happens at least once during the show. If a team comes calling that's really desperate, maybe he ends up going somewhere else. But, for right now, he's still with the Broncos. He's going to be the number 3 quarterback. And we'll see. We'll go from there. But Bo Nix, let's get back to Bo Nix, though. I mean, look, the Broncos as a team, I don't really expect them to be very good this year. And when you look at the offensive side of the ball, there's some guys that got to prove themselves a little bit. Javonte Williams coming off of an injury, not last year, but the year before that, and he was, trying to get himself back, and maybe another year removed, we see more of the Javonte Williams we saw before his injury. Tim Patrick scored a touchdown in this preseason, I believe. And it's good to see him back out there because the last couple of years, I mean, he's had season-ending injuries. They still got Cortland Sutton. They were able to rework a deal with him. So that's your number 1 wide receiver right there. I don't really know what to expect from the Broncos. I mean, again, I don't really think they're going to be very good. I think they're most likely going to be the last place team in the division. I like the other teams better. Well, the Chiefs obviously, are in a class of their own. But, the Chargers got some question marks, of course. The Raiders, I mean, I think the Raiders, could be decent. But, I don't know. I like the talent on the other teams a little bit more than I like the Broncos. But, when if Bo Nix goes out there, and shows that he's the guy, maybe the Broncos steal some games that they're not supposed to. But with this announcement, though, you got him starting week 1, Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, who we talked about earlier this week. I mean, now we're just waiting on Drake May. Could Drake May be starting? We're not going to see J.J. McCarthy, and we're not going to see Michael Penix Jr. For different reasons, of course. But like I've been saying, and I was saying it in our production meeting as well, this quarterback class has the potential to be very good if these guys go out there and prove it. Because pretty much all of them played well in the preseason. Have played well in the preseason. Now, not all of them are going to start from day one, but, when they get their opportunities, then we'll get a full idea of what, how to evaluate this class as a whole. But we're going to see a big chunk of them starting, most of them. And we'll see if Drake May is the next one to be named a starter. And obviously they're in different situations. Like when you look at Caleb Williams, I think right now he's in the best situation. Of the ones that are healthy, I mean, J.J. McCarthy, you could argue he was in the best situation, or isn't in the best situation, but now he's hurt. We're not going to see him at all. The Broncos, we'll see. They got some young receivers that they got there as well. Troy Franklin, a receiver they drafted. So, only time will tell. But let me know what you guys think, though. Did the Broncos make the right decision starting Bo Nix? Would you have had him sit? I mean, look, if he's ready to go and they feel confident in starting him, then by all means, they could do that. And that's what they've done. So it is exciting to see yet another rookie quarterback is going to be a starter. Because again, we weren't sure. Like the only one that we were really, I mean, I guess the first 2 picks in the draft. I mean, Caleb Williams we knew. I mean, that was announced way early on in the offseason. Jane Daniels we kind of figured, but you know the Commanders waited a little bit. I think also because they wanted to see how he was in game, just to make sure. Because you do have Marcus Mariota on the roster. I mean, I think really they all kind of fell in that category of we got to just see how they do. They look in a game in the preseason and then, you know, go from there. Like Caleb Williams, it's like, well, they're not going to sit him and start Tyson Bagent. You know, like the Broncos, they have a guy that they had last year in Jarrett Stidham who could step in and start. The Commanders brought in Marcus Mariota. The Patriots brought back Jacoby Brissett. You know, the Vikings had Sam Darnold. So, you know, and obviously the Falcons, they signed Kirk Cousins to that big contract. So he is going to be the starter regardless. But, you know, they also drafted their future, Michael Penix. But with the Bears, you knew Caleb Williams is starting day one. But now, you know, you got a couple other quarterbacks and maybe one more that could be starting, and then you go from there. So, let me know what you guys think, though, about the Broncos naming Bo Nix the starter. What kind of season do you think he's going to have in 2024? So, before we go to break, I just want to remind you guys again to tip or donate and get your comments recognized. Make sure to go to the $ icon in the chat menu. It will allow you to send out a super chat during the live broadcast. I will acknowledge it during the show. And, you know, it's just a great way to make the show more lively, more interactive between me and you guys, the viewers. And also the other way to help out the show is going to the link, which is gsmcpodcast.net. Any way you guys can help out the show, we really appreciate it each day as we bring out content to you guys each and every week. So when we come back from our second break of the show, we'll talk about the Sunday ticket when it comes to the Apple Store, and I'll give you my thoughts on that. And yeah, so with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast, and for the third part of the show, we are now going to talk about the Sunday ticket when it comes to the Apple Store. So I know I talked about the lawsuit, and you know the NFL appealed it, and they ended up ruling in the NFL's favor. So now there was some more news that came out on the price when it comes to the Apple Store, getting the Sunday ticket on the Apple Store. So the Sunday ticket is now available for purchase on the Apple App Store for $679.99 with an option to add Red Zone for a price of now $739.99 per year. The package is available for viewing on iPad or iPhone through the Apple App Store. The NFL clarified that it does not control the pricing of Sunday Ticket or receive additional fees from its sale. Apple takes a 30% fee for anything sold in its store, which is reflective in the higher pricing. The NFL considers Sunday Ticket a premium product that complements over-the-air broadcast on local CBS and Fox affiliates, aiming to protect its revenue from those networks. So, and then my friend sent a tweet in our sports group chat. This is from Willie Lutz. So, ESPN proposed individual team packages for $70 that would allow you to watch all 17 of your favorite NFL team games. The league said no. And I know that's something that I brought up, and many people have brought up, but I brought it to light in, our show here, is rather than having, consumers pay for an entire package, you just pay for your team. So you're not paying that $400, whatever it is, not from the App Store, but just, on YouTube TV for $479 or $379. It really is just outrageous, the pricing. Now, are there going to be people out there that pay that kind of money to watch it on their Apple devices? Yeah, there definitely will be. Will I be one of those people? No, I will not. And I know I've brought up that my schedule right now, the way it is, the way it's structured, it's not really worth it for me to buy it. Now, even if my schedule did work out, then I'm probably going to Red Zone. Because, now, that's because I'm on the East Coast, and I watch the Giants and the Jets primarily. Now, the Jets could be a little more interesting this year, and, I'm a Giant fan, so got to focus on them a little bit. But, when we get late in the season, and, especially if when the Giants are out of it, if the Giants are out of it, I'll say if, but I'm leaning towards when they're out of it. I don't want to watch those teams. I want to watch some of these other games because there's games later in the season that are more appealing that I want to watch. But the only way I'm really going to be able to watch them is if I go to Red Zone, and they just happen to have, a team driving on one of the better games. So, and I told you guys last year, the only football Sunday that I was really home for, the only game I could watch in its entirety was Jets-Falcons in that monsoon that they played at MetLife. And the final score was 12-7? I don't even remember. But I was like, I am not watching that game. So I watched Red Zone until the later games, where that was the week of the Eagles' collapse when they played the 49ers. The start of their collapse, which we thought was going to be the game of the year, but it turned out not to be the case. But yeah, that's what I ended up doing, is going to Red Zone. But yeah, these prices are just I'm not paying that price. I know and like I said, there are going to be people, there are going to be individuals that do that, and that's their right to. If they have the funds to do that and they want to pay that price, by all means, go and do it. But it's a little much. It's a little much. I'm just going to say that. I mean, you're paying over $100 a month now for 4 months to, watch every game. Now, they have a different perspective on it. They think that's a reasonable price. And now with Apple and their pricing, they think that's reasonable. But I don't know, for many people, including myself, I don't think so. Now, the NFL could really do whatever it wants because they are a machine when it comes to making money. So they are going to upcharge you for this product. And, they want you also to watch your local broadcasts. But, if, like myself, football on the East Coast, when it comes to the Jets and the Giants, it hasn't been great. has not been great the last few years. Well, more than that. Especially for the Jets, because they haven't made the playoffs since 2010. But I'd rather watch, especially later in the season when games, become more important, there's more on the line, I'd rather watch some of these other games. Now, you'll still get to watch, the Sunday night game, the Monday night game, Thursday night. And obviously, we got the Black Friday game. We got the game in Brazil. Well, that's going to be on Peacock, so if you don't have Peacock, you're not watching it. But there are, there are good games that you're going to be able to consume. But, between the early slate of games and the late afternoon games, if there's a game that you really want to watch, and you can't because you're in a different area, then then the alternative is, well, then you got to pay, depending on what device you have, you got to pay basically an arm and a leg to watch that game. And it's just, is that worth it? Now, it was nice being a student because you had the student discount. I think the student discount was $100 in total. That's worth it. So, with my brother now being a college student, at any point I feel, all right, I think it's worth getting the Sunday ticket. Then he's gonna be our source to get that. But right now, the way it is, it's just not worth it. It's not worth paying all that money. Because already, we're paying, we got Verizon is my TV provider. So, my family's paying for that. To watch the games that, we're able to watch now. But now we got to pay even, that much more just to watch some out-of-market games. I don't think it's worth it. And it's unfortunate, but that's just my opinion on it. And I can't, I can't tell the NFL how to run their operation. If they feel that's the price, then that's what it is. If we all, a lot of us probably don't agree with it, but there's nothing we can really do about it. And, when they continue to add games to the regular season, that price is only going to go up. And it's going to keep going up. You think it's going to stop there? No, it's going to keep going up. So, it's just, you got to find another way if you're not willing to pay that price. But that's just how it is. And again, it's unfortunate, but that's the business side of things for you. And the NFL feels what they're doing is right, and we just got to accept it. So, but even like on your Apple device, if you want to buy it off the Apple Store, that is unbelievable. Over $700 if you get Red Zone with it. For some people, that's, 2 paychecks or 1 paycheck. That's unbelievable. But that's the NFL. So you're going to have people that buy it, but there's going to be a lot of people that are going to say, yeah, I'm good. I'll watch whatever local game is on. Because I've said it, I like to sit down and watch a whole game. I as much as I do love Red Zone a lot, I do like to watch a full game all the way through. So that's just me. As my dog starts barking. But yeah, let me know what you guys think though about the price for Sunday Ticket on the Apple Store, let me know in the comments. So when we come back from our next break, we will talk about the comments that Sauce Gardner made on Daniel Jones. We'll kind of just get into that discussion, and I'll give you my thoughts on it when we come back from our next break of the show. Yeah, again, I apologize. I don't know if there's someone at the door, but it's you know what? It just always happens where, and sometimes it's nothing. She'll just start barking like crazy, and there's nobody there. But, my parents will say she hears something. I guess she does, because when she goes outside, when we let her out, she's barking all over the place. But then there'll be times where, she's in the house and she's just laying down and as calm as anything. But then she's a lunatic, like just now. So, but that's kind of one of the things that, doing a broadcast in my bedroom, that's one of the things you have to deal with is the outside noise. And that's that falls in that category. So you just got to deal with it. But right now it has stopped. So hopefully, that's besides the sneezing, that's also something that you'll hear at least once or twice during the show is my dog barking at some point, whether it's the mailman or just anybody coming to the house at some point. That you just got to deal with it. So, and I'm sure that, pet owners that, are watching, you know exactly what I'm talking about. All right. So I apologize for going off on the tangent there, but anyways, so when we come back, we'll talk about Sauce Gardner and Daniel Jones. So stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC. To access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the fourth part of the show, we're going to talk about an odd situation yesterday. So Sauce Gardner was being interviewed, and the Giants and the Jets are gearing up for their, and as I'm saying that, starts barking again. So the Jets and the Giants are getting ready to practice, getting ready for their preseason game on Saturday. And, had some joint practices. And, there was this awkward moment where, a reporter asked Sauce Gardner about Daniel Jones. And he called Daniel Jones a good quarterback. He said, he's a good quarterback, you feel me? I thought I was about to pick him off today. I had a little cloud rep. He had looked at the last minute to try to throw the check down to Wan'Dale Robinson. I thought I had the pick, but he kept it. The competitive period, it was very competitive. It was great. I had fun out there today. I don't really know what to say. And then he also said, and then this is what he said on social media. He said, he's a good quarterback. I just got a little distracted with something mid-interview. And he said, chill in his tweet. And again, you're going to have people that overreact to it and be like, oh, he doesn't think Daniel Jones is a good quarterback. It was kind of odd, but there are people that say, well, he got caught off guard by the question, because, I guess he didn't expect anyone to ask him that. It's going to be interpreted many different ways. Now, I could sit here as a Giant fan and say, yeah, he probably thinks a different thing than what he actually said, but he's not going to say it out loud. I'm really just going to say, you know what? I feel bad for Daniel Jones. I do. I'm going to take that stance because it's just you have the fan base that is, the part of the fan base that wants him to be gone, and Hard Knocks, the Giants were looking to trade up to get Drake May, and, now you got this with Sauce Gardner. I mean, it's just Daniel Jones is now. It's especially because it's where I am on the East Coast. Of course, it's going to be the topic of conversation, but all this outside noise. I mean, it's got to be getting to him a little bit because I mean, I would love to know how he feels right now at this moment with all of this going on around him, and on top of that. He's coming off of an ACL injury that, derailed his season. And, he missed a large chunk of the season. And now he comes back, his first game action, he throws 2 picks, almost threw 3. And again, the fans are all over him, and it's just, I mean, how is he going to respond to that? How is he going to respond to all of this? Because, I mean, you hear Brian Dable come on and you hear Joe Shane, and they do, talk up Daniel Jones. They still say that they believe in him, and they also say that, especially Joe Shane on Hard Knocks, he talked about the offensive line that the Giants have had and how really no quarterback was going to succeed around it or with that offensive line. Now, the offensive line actually has looked good so far this preseason. And the Giants got some weapons, and Malik Neighbors looks like a stud. And I got the new Madden, and there's a lot of plays where I'm just throwing it up to Malik Neighbors and hoping that he catches it. Because he's going to be a very good player for the Giants. You could just tell. Now, what's going to hurt him a little bit is, the quarterback position. Because Daniel Jones, look, he had time to throw. And there were times that he just held on to the ball. I mean, especially the pick 6. He had time. And didn't get rid of it in time. He's about to get sacked for a safety. He throws the ball to try to throw it away, and it gets picked off. So, there are people that will defend Daniel Jones and say, well, I mean, look at the offensive line. Look at the weapons that he has. But now it seems like he's got weapons and he's got an offensive line, but if he does not play well this season, and those two things have improved, then, yeah, that's all the more reason for the Giants to move off of him. But I want him to prove me and many others wrong. I want him to go out there and have a really good season. And the Giants, get back to being a more respectable team, the team that we saw more so in 2022. But until I see that, I'm of the mindset that they should move off of him after this year. And I think they will regardless. I mean, unless the Giants have this unreal year where they just go on a miraculous run and, go deep in the playoffs. But that's probably not going to happen. So that's really my take on it. Because I'm not going to sit here and say, well, Sauce Gardner got distracted. Or Sauce Gardner, really meant that Jones was not a good quarterback. He was just saying that just to cover himself. I'm not going to sit here and say that. Because you know what? I don't know. I'm not in that room. Did Sauce Gardner actually get distracted? Maybe he actually did. I mean, I know listening to the local radio stations here, what if he actually did get distracted? What if he got caught off guard by the question? He didn't know he was going to be asked that question. But I mean, let's say, they asked him about, I'm not going to say Patrick Mahomes. Let's say they ask him about, like, Justin Herbert, right? They have a joint practice with the Chargers. I feel like, Sauce Gardner is going to give you a straight answer. Like, hey, yeah, I mean, he's really good. But Daniel Jones is I know, and look, maybe Justin Herbert's not the best example because I know there's some people out there that think Justin Herbert isn't good. But I feel like more times than not, people are going to, speak highly of Justin Herbert. With Daniel Jones, yeah, more of a controversial I don't even know. I don't even want to say controversial. But, he's more of a guy that you're not going to get, yeah, I mean, he's really good. But that's what Sauce Gardner did. So, I don't know. I'm not going to sit here and say one way or another because I just don't know. All I'm going to tell you is I just feel bad for Daniel Jones because he's just been getting dragged around. But that's just that's what it is playing as a quarterback in New York, even though you're playing in your games in New Jersey, but still. And I will be seeing him in a couple of weeks in those uniforms. I cannot wait. And I really hope that he goes out there against the Vikings defense and he throws for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns. Malik Neighbors says 3 touchdowns. That would be great. But yeah, probably not going to happen. But I'm just hoping for a good game and that the Giants hopefully win. So, and it's going to be a tough game. That's one of the few games I looked at on the schedule, and I'm like, yeah, the Giants can maybe win that game because, I mean, it's either going to be Sam Darnold or J.J. McCarthy. But look at how the Giants have played. Well, how Daniel Jones looked in that first preseason game. I mean, if he plays like that in week 1, it's not going to matter who plays quarterback for the Vikings. So, but yeah, it's just, I really do feel for the guy because he really, I mean, he seems like a great person, and he has had his moments, but unfortunately for him, the bad has kind of outweighed the good. And I just, I just don't think he's the answer for the Giants. And that doesn't mean that I don't think he could go elsewhere and be better elsewhere. I just think where he was picked and just the team that he was brought into, because, I do think Joe Shane and Brian Dable will figure it out. But, the past GMs with Gettleman, well, really Gettleman, and then you had Joe Judge and Pat Shurmur. And the Giants just didn't draft well, and they didn't, bring in guys to really help this team through free agency. Daniel Jones was set up to fail. And you could say the same thing about Zach Wilson. But, I mean, who knows? If they end up on a different team, are we having these conversations? Or do they turn out better? I mean, again, we could play that game with so many different players in all different sports. But it's just, you feel for Daniel Jones. And I just hope that whatever happens this year, I mean, I'm hoping he doesn't, embarrass himself and he goes out there and he has a decent year. And then he could go elsewhere in a better spot, maybe be a backup somewhere and, find a better path with another team as opposed to with the Giants. But it's just, it's like I said, you feel for the guy, and I just hope things work out. I mean, again, we'll see what happens this year, but I lean more towards Giants are moving off of him, and they're gonna find somebody else. So, but yeah, I when it comes to this Sauce Gardner stuff, I mean, I'm not gonna overreact to it. I'm not. It could be many different things. His reaction to the question. I mean, you could say, he went to social media and, used that as damage control, but I don't know. I'm just going to say we don't know. We could just assume. I mean, in my mind, I think what he said is not what he truly meant, but I don't know. I'm not going to make that assumption one way or another. I'm just, I just feel bad for Daniel Jones. That's really what it comes down to. So we're going to take our final break of the show now. When we come back, I will do my final rankings. We'll do the receiver groups within the AFC West. So for one final time today, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the final part of the show, we are going to do our final wide receiver group rankings. This time we will be covering the AFC West. And that'll be it. No more rankings. We're just going to, we did quarterbacks, we did running backs, we did receivers, and now with the season, coming around the bend, I think this will probably be it. So we got, of course, these are the teams here. We got the Broncos, the Chargers, the Chiefs, and the Raiders. Again, another division. Again, there was some back and forth of where certain teams would go. It is kind of tough. So either 3 or 4. I was leaning towards putting the Chargers last because, there's a lot of unproven guys on the team. You got a bunch of rookies coming in and, guys going into their second year that are coming off a disappointing performance. They signed DJ Chark. And then you got the Broncos. Look, I think Cortland Sutton right now, out of the receivers that, these two teams have, you probably rank him at the top because he is a proven receiver. And he's coming off of a nice season last year for the Broncos. But, they traded Jerry Jeudy. So, yeah, it is, it's tough. So, I would probably, like I said, I probably lean, right now the Chargers, I put them last. And then I give the Broncos the respect because of Cortland Sutton. Last year, 772 receiving yards, 10 touchdowns, which was a career high for him. And obviously the Broncos were able to work things out with his contract. So with the Broncos depth chart, so Cortland Sutton you got at the top. You got Tim Patrick, Josh Reynolds, who's coming off of a nice season with the Lions, even though had some crucial drops in the championship game against the 49ers. But last year, 608 receiving yards and 5 touchdowns. So, one of those other options for Bo Nix. Tim Patrick, making his return. I know there was some talk that maybe he wouldn't make the team, but you got him as well. But they drafted Troy Franklin out of Oregon, who was a buddy of Bo Nix. And looking at his stats from last year with the Ducks, 1,300 yards receiving, almost 1,400 yards receiving. He had 1,383 receiving yards and 14 touchdowns. So he could become a weapon for the Broncos there. So, I would lean towards putting the Broncos over the Chargers. So I got the Chargers last, and then I got the Broncos at 3. Now, that doesn't mean things can't change. We'll see how the rookies are. McConkey, they also drafted Jerry Rice's son. Got DJ Chark. Like I said, can Quinn Johnson take that next step? Joshua Palmer's really, that only proven receiver on the team. Besides, I guess, DJ Chark, because DJ Chark's been around for a while. But, now he's with the new team. Joshua Palmer's been there. Again, I said it. I do wish that they tried to figure out a way to keep Keenan Allen, but that ended up not happening. So, so Broncos at 4, Chargers at 4, Broncos at 3. Now, we got 2 and 1. We got the Chiefs and the Raiders. Believe it or not, I'm actually going to put the Chiefs at 2. And the reason for that is because the Raiders have Devontae Adams. Right now, you look at the Chiefs receiving core. Last year it was not good. Now, Rashee Rice, turned out to be the best receiver of the group. Had a productive season. Really started to play well towards the end of the season and, played a huge part in the playoff run, of course. They did bring in Marquise Brown. They brought in Xavier Worthy. This receiving core is going to be much better than what it was last year. Now, Marquise Brown gets hurt first game of the preseason. So, his status right now is up in the air. But, whenever he does play, he's going to play a role on this team. But right now, I'm going to put the Chiefs receiving core at 2. Now, it's the receiving core. Now, if you factor in Travis Kelce, then that's a little different. But I'm putting the Chiefs receiving core at 2. Now, obviously, you got Patrick Mahomes, so, when it comes to the quarterback rankings, he's number 1, and then there's everybody else. But, yeah, I think I'm still going to put their receiving core at 2, which might be a little bit surprising to some people, but I don't know. That's just that's how I feel. But going to their depth chart, so I don't know why it's showing me just the defense and not the offense as well, because usually it'll show everything when I go to ESPN. But yeah, so looking at the receivers, so you got Hollywood Brown, you got Rashee Rice, Justin Watson, Xavier Worthy, Sky Moore, Justin Ross. They still have McCole Hardman. They still got Kadarius Toney, which, Kadarius Toney might not even be on the team anymore. He might be a cut casualty. But you do see now the receiving core, adding Hollywood Brown, adding Xavier Worthy. That's going to help. And we're going to see more of those explosive plays that we haven't seen in a while since, the Tyreek Hill days. We're going to see that. Obviously got to get Hollywood Brown healthy, but we're going to see it, and that's what's going to make this Chiefs offense dangerous. So, again, they're at 2. At 1, I got the Raiders. And like I said, it's because of Davante Adams. Davante Adams, to me, is still one of the best receivers in the NFL, and many others will say the same thing. Last year, despite all the stuff that went on with the quarterback position for the Raiders, he still finished with over 1,000 yards, 1,144 receiving yards, and 8 touchdowns. Really is the definition of consistency. Again, the touchdowns were down and the receiving yards were down from, the last couple of years between his first year with the Raiders and his last year with Green Bay. Because last year with Green Bay, he had 1,553 receiving yards and 11 touchdowns. And then, the 1 year with Derek Carr, he had 1,516 receiving yards and 14 touchdowns. But yeah, last year, still finished with a respectable stat line. And, you're hoping for a little more stability at the quarterback position with Gardner Minshew now the starter. And maybe at some point Aiden O'Connell does start. But, it's not going to be like, you're going to have Brian Hoyer starting and Aiden O'Connell and Jimmy Garoppolo. I mean, it's, you're hoping that Gardner Minshew could start, the majority of the games. And, maybe if he gets hurt, Aiden O'Connell has to come in. But you're just hoping there's not a lot of, back and forth. And, and Davante Adams, and especially watching the receiver documentary on Netflix, I mean, early on in the season when Garoppolo was starting, I mean, Davante Adams was frustrated. And, things changed when Aiden O'Connell took over. But, Davante Adams is hoping that, at least for this year, because, I don't think 2 guys that they have are the long-term answer. At least for this year, at least you have one quarterback that, that you could rely upon, and it's not constant, switching. Which I think with Antonio Pierce, I think the Raiders have maybe found some stability there. Which, again, the Raiders, you're not used to someone saying that, but with the things that have gone on over the years, but that's just how I feel. So, but yeah, they got Davante Adams, one of the best receivers in the NFL. And you got Jacoby Myers, who had a good season for them last year, too. His first season with the Raiders. Last year, 807 receiving yards, 8 touchdowns. He was a good weapon for him. And, Trey Tucker, he's looked at as their speedster. He's 23 years old, going to his second year. Last year, he had 331 receiving yards and 2 touchdowns. We'll see what kind of year he could have. But, from what I saw last year, you got to like what you see. But, yeah, and then they got some other guys, Jalen Guyton, who played with the Chargers, Christian Wilkinson. I mean, there's some of these other guys, behind the top 3 that, I'll be honest, I'm not too familiar with. They'd let go of Hunter Renfrow. But I don't know. For me, I think with Davante Adams and Jacoby Myers as well, I would put the Raiders as the best receiving core in this division. Now, we'll see how Xavier Worthy and Hollywood Brown do this year with Patrick Mahomes. Now, with Patrick Mahomes, it's obviously going to help. Now, with the Raiders, Gardner Minshew, I think, for what he is, he's solid. But Devontae Adams could be good with anybody because that's just, that's who he is. That's why he's one of the top receivers in the NFL. We saw how he played with Brett Hundley back in the day. Had some good games with Jared Stidham at quarterback when he replaced Derek Carr. He can have good games with whoever. I mean, had a good game or two with Garoppolo. So he's good. He's good with whoever is the quarterback. So, but yeah, just to go through it again. So the Broncos and the Chargers. So the Chargers at 4, Broncos at 3, Chiefs at 2, Raiders at 1. Let me know what you guys think about those rankings. How would you rank the receiving groups within the AFC West? And that is our last rankings there. And yeah, that's pretty much it for the show for today. Thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure to check out all the other shows. As always, we appreciate your guys' viewership each and every day. And yeah, tomorrow's Friday, and I will talk a little bit about some college football because we got week 0 coming up this week. Not a ton of big games. I mean, the biggest game of the slate for this weekend is Georgia Tech and Florida State. So, we'll get into that. We'll talk about it a little bit tomorrow. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Thank you guys for tuning in. And yeah, as always, I'm your host, Kenneth Grunfelder, signing off from the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. Have a good day, and I will talk to you guys tomorrow. Take care.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn, ain't that great.